Greetings, Unity Christian Church of Memphis friends and family. Welcome. We will begin by acknowledging the transition of our fellow brother, George Warren, who is a long-term member of Unity Christian Church. We will give this moment of silence in honor of him. Eternal Spirit, bless this community as George returns to spirit, and give support to Margaret, his long-time partner's wife and soulmate. Bless her and give her strength so that she may continue to shine her light as she has throughout her life with the community and others, inspiring us. Thank you for the blessing of George. Thank you for the blessing of this community through the love that we share with each other. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for the blessing of this community as we acknowledge the ambassadors of prayer chaplains who will be inducted next Sunday at 11 o'clock in a special live Zoom service. So please join us as we celebrate a very interesting, prayerful, exciting journey to the role of leadership as chaplains. Today's daily word is inner peace. Inner peace. The peace of God fills my mind, my heart, and my life. Quiet moments in a fragrant garden, a stroll by a lake or stream, or a visit to any place of beauty inspires a deep awareness of peace. I also enjoy peace in the company of friends, those with whom I have great camaraderie and deep bonds. Growing spiritual awareness, I claim inner peace wherever I am. True inner peace comes from deep inside me. If I am feeling less than peaceful, I pause and breathe out worry, fear, and unhealthy concern, giving my full attention to the divine presence within me. I breathe in a peace that soothes my emotions, calms my thoughts, and relaxes my body. As I continue to inhale peace and exhale concern, I move forward with renewed clarity and confidence. This writing was inspired by the book of Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 3. Those of steadfast mind you keep in peace because they trust in you. Those of steadfast mind you keep in peace because they trust in you. Today's lesson is a focus on two brothers, Cain and Abel. You know that story. It is the story of the human defects of jealousy, envy, insecurity, which are represented by Cain, versus love, selflessness, and spiritual love, represented by Abel. As our American family grows, our brothers and sisters, we are cousins from all over the world, and we acknowledge that we have different values and different ideas, just like every family. But the goal has to be to respect each other from a place that we listen to each other and that we listen to the inner peace within ourselves. This is how we are able to channel our gifts, because these gifts come from the divine spirit within. The emotions that hold us back from our greatness. Have you ever known or heard of someone who was maybe, or known someone who was maybe a very, very good artist, but then they chose not to draw anymore because maybe their best friend or their sibling may have been a better artist? And for that reason, they sort of stopped and just dropped out of the scene. Well, that is an example of how we can stop ourselves from achieving our level of greatness. And this is an experience that may come from fear because you're not good enough, or envy because you think someone else is better, and then you just stop. That is a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to express the unique talent given to each and every one of us, our individual talent expressed only as we can express it. And that can be missed because of the emotion of fear. When we hold these thoughts that do not serve us in our consciousness, even though these thoughts are unconscious and sometimes bias, it's unintentional because we're not aware of it. We spoke about that last week when we talked about unconscious bias. And we're affirming this today because we want to remember that these thoughts, until we work on ourselves, as it says in the Daily Word, being able to identify that place of inner peace, then we are praying without knowing. Prayer is something that we've discussed, and we will continue to discuss prayer. We'll even have more classes on prayer because it is so important to be aware of the thoughts that we are carrying in our minds consciously, but more importantly, unconsciously. Because unconscious bias is thinking a certain way because it's the way it's been and no one's questioned it. It is that information that has given us or taught us from generation to generation, and then we're acting on it without thinking about it. Like, say, the man who has the white beard, we can look at them and just in our minds from our unconscious bias say that they are a racist. Or the bias that we think that the police are here to serve some of the people and not all of the people. And in some cases that's been true, but in many cases it has not. But to carry that thought is a bias. There are some people who believe that all black people can sing. And that for sure is an unconscious bias, because if you ask my kids, they'll say that I can't sing, but I would say I can't sing yet. A bias that I had from being a young girl watching the news was about German Shepherds, that all German Shepherds are vicious. And then one day I had an opportunity after meditation to look into the eyes of a German Shepherd, and I was able to release that fear of my bias against German Shepherds. So in the story of Cain and Abel, if we can imagine Cain, he had a thought about his brother that made him believe that it was so important that he killed him to relieve him of his misery. Cain had to have had the thought that moved him to this action, whether it was true or not. He believed that it was true, so true for him that he took his own brother's life. It was jealousy. These two brothers came from the same mother and father. If you're not an only child, You may not understand this, but you probably have experienced it in your life at some point, whether you were that student of the arts and that person you thought was better than you, or at work, or even in your community. But yes, it happens. And it's important to know that this is part of one's thinking and not necessarily the truth. We saw this action in the prodigal son. When the son returned from his explorations of the world, his brother was jealous for his return. This is a natural human instinct to feel the need to protect yourself. And it is unconscious until you become conscious of your thinking. I remember when my sister would come home from college. She went to school on the East Coast. And when she returned, everybody was happy to see her, including me. I was very happy. But then my mama would make those special meals for her, and I felt slighted and left out. At that time, I was jealous and I felt unloved. This was my ego. This was the aspect of Cain that caused him to feel such rage that he killed his brother. Most of us don't go that far, but the purpose of this story, this is the aspect of Cain that we as humans challenge ourselves to overcome. Now, as a grown woman, I can look back and see where this was my insecurity. Not that my mother didn't love me, but she was just expressing her love for my sister and sharing that, and wanted to treat her with honor and respect. When Cain became angry, it was because God had looked on him and his offering unfavorably, but then he favored the offering of Abel. We're looking at the story both in its literal format, but also in the metaphysical format. So in the literal format, Cain killed his brother because he was unhappy with the fact that God did not favor his offering. But in that moment, when God did not favor his offering, Cain was given the opportunity to reassess and to reconsider his offering, to make a change of his offering, to allow it to be one of intimacy from his Christ nature. This is what we all have that opportunity to do whenever we feel jealousy or envy for another. We can stop and ask within ourselves to take that moment of pause in peace and to allow ourselves to settle with the divine nature of ourselves. We could say that it was very immature, that he had rested in knowing the love of God, and that he could have made a different decision. That's what we could say, but what did he do? This is why it is important to become conscious of this aspect of the self. This is what became conscious of the aspect of myself when I realized it was ego, because then later it enriched my life. When I became a mother with my 2 children, I approached their situations of conflict from what would Cain do? That's right, what would Cain do? And make sure that I did not follow that path. I had the great privilege of living with my family in California when I studied acting. My Aunt Gloria shared with me how she, with her authority, taught my 2 cousins, her 2 oldest sons, that they were the only 2 brothers that they would have at that time, and that they had to get along. This inspired me. I hadn't realized that this was an effort and a responsibility of being a parent until my Aunt Gloria taught that to me. 20 years later, I used her advice. And by no means, I am not suggesting that there have not been times of intense disagreements between the two guys that I have as kids, but they always come back to the base of love. I would make them hug each other until they would laugh whenever they had a conflict. And I taught them that you cannot say the word God without a smile on your face. To explain to them that this chaos, anger, frustration is a human condition and a human defect, and that it can be overcome by changing the way that we think once we become aware that we're acting out of fear and insecurity. We then can make different choices. By no means am I suggesting that I get it right all the time. I don't get it right, but I do allow Spirit to guide me, and it does miraculously work out. So I am suggesting that we know ourselves better and develop relationships with ourselves so that we can make these adjustments in our thinking that assist us as we relate to others with honor and respect. When children are taught about the love of God that dwells within them, the protection that comes through the knowing that God cares for them like the birds and the lilies in the fields, by teaching them that God cares for them too much and how it so enriches their lives, it allows peace to just flow through, because as a child, it is easier to accept this truth. As an adult child of God, we, with intention, come to a place where we can relax and release. But we do this by getting back to that childlike nature. So we ask, why Cain? Well, my mama used to say to me that young people are not born with good manners. They have to be taught. And if you can just think for a moment that Cain and Abel were the children of Adam and Eve. So it made me think, what kind of parents were Adam and Eve? It's something that you can ask yourself when you're in your meditation and allow that answer to come for you. But if we take the entire story literally, which is written for all of us to interpret the story wherever we are in our understanding of spiritual truth, the fact remains that they were their children, and they had a terrible time by being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, like us, on the journey to our path back to God. Cain and Abel are both of us. They represent both of us. Or the two of them represent us. The two of them represent us. Cain and Abel both represent us. We're talking about the children of God, who are us. So Cain was a child of God who chose to express himself through the lens of a person who felt that he himself could do it alone. And when things didn't work out, he became angry and jealous. Abel, his brother, metaphysically was the one who resonated with God, and he followed his inner wisdom, listening to God, which was that gave Abel the ideas that would please God. This is what moved Abel to action, making offerings of life, the commitment of life to God, where Cain was offering not exactly what God was looking for, but Cain lacked the patience to connect with God, to listen for the inspiration guiding him to a place of peace. That is the metaphysical meaning. But to put it in terms of everyday use, if you have a job or a position in life and that job or position is terminated, a relationship is ended, but that divine idea was part of your life plan, as we all have a plan in life when we are in our oneness with God, you are able to express yourself in the way that the brother Abel did when he was at one with God for the next steps. And sometimes it doesn't seem like it's going to work out, but when Abel died, which we are all divine ideas, Eve had another son whose name was Seth. And metaphysically, what that is saying is that when a divine idea that is meant for you, and for some reason, maybe by your choice, that you don't believe in yourself, there's an opportunity for a new divine idea to have birth. It is a discipline through hard times to keep the mind focused on good. But it is not impossible, because we can always go back to center, go back to that place where we walk in a pasture or by the still waters, guided through peace. When we learn to accept and listen to the love of God, which is greater than any problem, the power of God is greater than any obstacle. The presence of God is our only connection, and there is nothing that is impossible. All things are possible when we believe with certainty that God is our source. This is where Cain missed the mark. Cain representing the ego, the earth, the physical, making offerings to God. It is Cain that represents, I can do this thing by myself. Abel, his brother, which was fluid like spirit, he represented the Spirit of God, the intuitive self that connects to God. When Abel made his offering to God, he made it so that God was pleased with Abel. And as we said earlier, Cain was so jealous that he killed his brother. That is like Cain, who is also a divine idea, because God did not destroy Cain. He banished Cain. He sent him to the city of Nod. So Cain had descendants that were great. Out of Cain came Noah through the descendants of his ancestors. This story represents the return to God, the connection and oneness to God. Even when things don't work out, you are given a second chance. Not like that of man, where second chances sometimes for many do not occur, but there is always a second chance with God. Because spirit cannot be snuffed out, that is why Eve had a son, third son named Seth. And the meaning of Seth is substitution. So a divine idea was substituted for the one that was snuffed out and killed. Ego cannot snuff out a divine idea. It will be substituted for another divine idea. We as individuals can snuff out our good ideas by saying something is too good for us or that I don't deserve it. But when we allow ourselves to release and go back to peace, then we can allow that divine idea to be born again. I of myself can do nothing. but through the Holy Spirit, I can do all things. Yes, the physical world will always be a challenge. The physical world will support our beliefs in lack, not enough food, not enough water, not enough riches. But the Spirit of God is all abundant in all good things. That is the comparison of Cain and Abel. Cain is there is not enough. Abel is there is always enough, because in that oneness with God, it gives you a path in the direction that takes you back to that place of peace and divine ideas flowing into your mind, connecting you to others to support your needs. Connecting to our holy God in prayer and meditation allows us to receive those divine ideas. We claim God as a source in all good things, and keeping that thought in the forefront of our mind, that is God in action. This is our deepest level of prayer. The offering that Abel made when he made his offering to God was himself. This is what pleased God. When we can say, your will and not my will, with the whole heart, we are making that offering of self. We are entering into that oneness with God. It is there that our answers and affirmations are realized. It is there that we enter into the kingdom of heaven. So in the story of Abel, who was a divine idea that was killed by his brother because of jealousy and fear, we learn that in Abel, the reason his offering was favored by God is because he offered himself. And offering himself means that he found in himself the spirit of life, and he connected that in his prayers and meditations. Bless you, keep you, and be safe in this day. We are thankful for this moment of unity. We are thankful for the opportunities to learn and grow and evolve in our oneness with you, God, our eternal Spirit and source of all things, so that we may be a vessel for you, expressing our individual talents developed from our passions and our interests, so that we may go out and serve the world and be a light of the world, expanding our territories to glorify your name. And so it is. Amen. Have a fabulous week. Be safe. And we look forward to seeing you next Sunday at the induction of the Ambassadors of Prayer Chaplains for Unity Christian Church of Memphis.